Augustus, in his memoirs, states that during his reign the Danube became the border of Roman possessions, and even the Dacians living on the other side of the river had to bear the authority of the Roman people without complaint. For their part, the Dacians continued to regard themselves as a free people, living under their own laws, under the rule of their own kings rather than Roman protégés. This difference in perceptions occasionally led to conflicts that determined the measure of freedom available to the neighbors. As a result of the Roman conquests on the lower Danube during the reign of Augustus, guard posts and legion camps appeared on its banks. In addition, the course of the Danube was patrolled by ships of the Moesian fleet, and its bases were located on the shore. At the latest, at the end of Augustus' reign, the beginning of Tiberius' reign, the territory of Moesia received the status of a province under a legate with consular authority. The eastern part of the province, the future Lower Moesia, became part of it after the year 46 with the abolition of the Kingdom of Odry's, whose territory was divided between several Roman provinces. In addition, a considerable corps of auxiliary troops was stationed in the province. In the middle of the 1st century, the largest factor of political destabilization on the lower Danube were the movements of the Sarmatians in the Black Sea steppes. Under their pressure, neighboring tribes moved in, intensifying their onslaught on the Roman frontier. From Tacitus it is known that in 62 the Macedonian and Scythian legions were withdrawn to the east. This weakening of the Moesian garrison tried to take advantage of the Sarmatians' Rossolans, who drew the dependent peoples of Bastarnae and Dacians. Their attack was repulsed by Plautius Silvanus, and Romans have taken hostages from attackers and have returned to them earlier given to Sarmatians in this capacity members of imperial families. Up to 100,000 people were resettled by the Roman governor on the territory of the province. The rest remained on the left bank of the Danube as a barrier for the Roman frontiers. Plautius Silvanus even traveled to the Crimea, where he assisted Chersonesus in the fight against the Scythians who threatened him. For his activity as governor, Plautius Silvanus was honored with triumphal decorations. In the winter of 67, the Roxolans again violated the peace agreements and made a swift raid on Roman territory. At the same time they were destroyed 2 Roman auxiliary cohorts. Encouraged by this success, the following winter the Roxolans repeated the raid. Their horsemen moved without any order, until suddenly they did not encounter the auxiliary forces of the Gaulish legion heading to Italy. The Roman soldiers advanced in readiness and easily defeated the Sarmatians, whose horses were sluggish in the thawing snow. At the end of 69, Moesia experienced 2 more terrible barbarian invasions. In the fall, a significant part of the troops on its territory went to Italy, where at this time there was a civil war between the supporters of Vespasian and Vitellius. The weakened defenses were hastened to take advantage of the Dacians. They managed to seize located on the banks of the Danube camp auxiliary cohorts and began to prepare to storm the fortresses of the legions. The governor of Syria, Licinius Mucianus, moving at this time in Italy with Vexillotsi Eastern legions, came to the aid of provincials and managed to throw the barbarians back behind the Danube. To prevent a repeat of the attack, Mucianus left in the province of Gnaeus Fonteius Agrippa, to whom he gave to help the troops recruited from among the former Vitellians. It was not long before the Sarmatians secretly crossed the frozen Danube at the beginning of winter. They went deep into the territory of the province and made a surprise attack on the wintering troops. In their bloody massacre killed the governor Fonteius Agrippa and his soldiers. The whole territory of the province was plundered and devastated. With the end of the Civil War and the establishment of Vespasian's rule, further measures were taken to strengthen the defense of the province. Rubrius Gallus, who arrived from Italy with reinforcements at the beginning of 70, managed to expel the Sarmatians and Dacians beyond the Danube and restore the former order in the province. Significant changes took place in the composition of the auxiliary troops in the province. Cohorts and alas, consisting of local natives who often sympathized with the anti-Roman struggle of their compatriots and were passive in repelling barbarian raids from across the Danube, were transferred to other provinces. They were replaced by auxiliary units, recruited from the Gauls and Germans, whom the local Thracians feared. In addition, in the composition of the provincial garrison grew the specific weight and importance of auxiliary detachments of archers of Eastern origin. The total number of Roman troops standing on the lower Danube under Flavius reached 45,000 soldiers. Although during the reign of Vespasian there were no major clashes on the lower Danube, in the light of subsequent events, the relative calm of his reign seems to be the calm before the storm. The main factor of destabilization in the region was the Dacians. Under the rule of their energetic ruler Diarpanius, the Dacians regained their former power, which they had enjoyed in the time of Burebista. In the summer of 85 they suddenly invaded the territory of Moesia. What caused the attack remains to be guessed. Perhaps it was a robbery raid, similar to those that the barbarians had made earlier. It cannot be ruled out that they were alarmed by the change in the principles of Roman policy towards the tribes living in the border zone, which was demonstrated by Emperor Domitian, who undertook a war against the Huts in Germany. Perhaps the Dacians decided to take advantage of the fact that all Roman forces were concentrated on the Rhine and, fearing to be the target of the next attack, struck first. What were the forces of the invaders? Exactly unknown, but they must have been significant. Even in the period of decline, the Dacians could field an army of 40,000 men. Now, during the revival of their power, they had a much larger army. The Roman governor, Gaius Oppius Sabinus, was taken by surprise by this invasion. He either underestimated the scale of the threat, or he simply did not have enough time to gather all the available troops. Either way, Oppius Sabinus came against the Dacians, having only Macedonian and Italic legions, was defeated in battle and died. His severed head the victors carried away with them, which indicates the severity of the Roman army defeat. After that the Dacians devastated the territory of the province. Having received the news about the defeat of Sabinus, Emperor Domitian left Rome in a hurry and went to the Danube accompanied by the Praetorian Guard and a staff of military specialists. Numerous reinforcements were urgently pulled to the area of hostilities. In the summer-fall of 85 Cornelius Fusc with heavy fighting managed to oust the Dacians from the Roman territory. Details of the hostilities remain unknown, but their intensity is evidenced by the fact that Domitian received at least 6 imperial acclamations. When the situation on the Danube ceased to cause concern, the emperor returned to Rome. His success was presented to the capital's public as the extermination of the enemy invading Roman territory, which gave the emperor the opportunity to celebrate the triumph. Cornelius Fusc remained on the Danube at the head of a large military group gathered here to undertake a punitive expedition beyond the Danube with the onset of summer. The intended purpose of the future action was to restore the prestige of Roman arms in the region and the reputation of Domitian, which had been broken after the defeat of Oppius Sabinus. In addition, no matter what Roman propaganda claimed, but the Dacians still had a significant fighting force, with which the prospects for long-term peace on the Danube remained doubtful. In the summer of 86, Cornelius Fusc put across the Danube pontoon bridge, on which the legions crossed to the left bank of the river. From here the Roman army through the valley of the river Olt moved inland. The enemy retreated without offering resistance. This military cunning Romans took for a sign of weakness. Believing that success is already secured, Cornelius Fusc lost vigilance and thus gave the Dacians a chance. As a result of skillfully arranged ambush on the Pass Târnu Roșu, Roman army was defeated, and its commander died. Contemporaries laid the main responsibility for the defeat on the commander. In the hands of the winners fell camp, transport, equipment and even throwing machines of the Roman army. Captured was some military standard, but not the eagle of the legion, as previously thought, and the losses among the soldiers were such that Tacitus, modeled on his predecessors, preferred to keep silent about the number of dead. Nevertheless, the legions were not surrounded and completely annihilated, as, for example, happened in the Battle of Teutoburg Forest. After the defeat and considerable losses, their remnants were still able to return across the Danube. Once again Domitian had to rush to the Danube to deal with the consequences of the defeat. The direct command was entrusted to the consul suffet Marcus Cornelius Nigrinus. The Romans undertook under his leadership military actions on the left bank of the Danube. As a result, Domitian received his 13th and 14th imperial acclamations, and Cornelius Nigrinus himself received his second consular insignia, making him the most successful military commander of his time. The consequences of these actions may have reverberated through the camp of Rome's Dacian opponents. Power passed to Decebalus, possibly the king's nephew, who until then had been in the shadows. It is unlikely that such a transition would have been possible without serious setbacks or even defeats. Decebalus himself is highly praised by Roman historians, emphasizing his commanding and diplomatic abilities, as well as the authority and influence he exerted over his soldiers. Roman preparations for a new counter-offensive took a full year. The new commander was appointed Lucius Titus Julianus, who had previously served as legate of the legion in Moesia and received insignia for the defeat of the invading Sarmatians. He now had at least 5 legions and about 50 auxiliary cohorts and ALS at his disposal. The new commander changed the direction of the main blow. He crossed the Danube on a pontoon bridge at Viminatius and invaded Dacia from the west, through the Banatian Mountains. Then he moved by the valley of the river Bistra to the pass of Tapi and then directly to the capital of Decebal Sarmizagetusu. Decebal with his army awaited the approach of the Romans at Tap. Here a fierce battle took place in which the Dacians were defeated. Roman losses were also very heavy, which prevented Titus Julianus to pursue the enemy and complete the campaign in the same year. Its success, however, was undoubted. Domitian, while in Rome, according to its results, adopted his 16th and 17th acclamations. The final defeat of Decebalus and the capture of his capital postponed for the next year's campaign. Continuation of the campaign against the Dacians prevented a sharp change in the strategic situation on the Roman borders. In the war against the Romans in Pannonia unexpectedly entered Marcomanni, Quads and Yazygi. Earlier they had refused to provide the reinforcements requested by Domitian, and then dared to even threaten the flanks of the Roman army. The outbreak of this war was provoked by Domitian himself, who hoped for a quick military victory. Measures taken for the sake of it from his side were not enough. When the Marcomanni defeated the Roman troops, Domitian had to make peace with the Dacians to move to the Pannonian border free troops. To make peace, Decebalus had to recognize his dependence on Rome, return the prisoners and trophies he had captured after the defeat of Fusca. In return, he was given a diadem and other royal insignia, a military subsidy, and civilian and military specialists of various kinds. Decebalus endeavored to avoid meeting Domitian in person, so the royal diadem was ceremonially placed on the head of his brother Digid. In Rome, this event was presented as proof not only of the conquest of the Dacians, but also of the emperor's mercy in sparing the defeated enemy.